Aloha, you are watching Living Delicious with Helena, our special controversial series about dying. Dying is the process that we will all experience. Living delicious and dying delicious. Again today with me there is a dying delicious expert, Robert Orfali. Welcome to the show again.
Hi, Helena. This is an ongoing series.
Yes, it will be a long. Actually, I invited you this time because of the hot topic. Supposedly, there has been a poll by QMark, the leading Hawaiian poll agency, that says that Hawaii voters strongly support aid in dying. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes. So the poll was conducted over a period of 2 weeks in late December, and there was like 600 people, a sample of 600, which is a pretty big sample, and it included 300 in Oahu, 100 in each of the islands, Maui, the Big Island, and Kauai. So it's a pretty representative poll.
Yes.
And QMark is the leading polling agency in the country. In
On
Hawaii.
Yes.
In Hawaii. And it also did the previous polls. So we have a comparison. We can use a baseline, the previous numbers, and see how it evolved, right now. And we were very pleasantly surprised by the results, as you will see, in a second. So do you want me to go through the results? Or?
Yes, but first I would like for viewers who are just watching this series, if you can tell us a little bit more about dying, aid in dying, death with dignity, and what is going on in the state of Hawaii legally about that. Just for the viewers, like a little recap of everything we have done recently in our shows.
It's a very long story because we had a whole
Short enough.
Yeah, we had a whole 2-3 segments on that. So as you know, we believe that it is already legal in the state of Hawaii because of the 1909 law and a constellation of laws that make Hawaii a state where there's no prohibition against assisted dying. So this is the contention. So it's not something that we're trying to change. We're trying to defend what the existing Hawaii Constitution is all about. The poll reinforces the fact that the public opinion is really for it. And as you know, it's very hard to get it through the legislation because it gets trapped into a committee and it can't get through the committee. So having a situation like Montana, which it became legalized through the courts as opposed to the legislation, is very helpful. Of course, it did get, the legislation has been involved because if you look at the Hawaiian law, it all came from the legislation. So it started off in 1909 when they gave a dying patient bill of rights, and then it continued until the very present. The 2004 pain law, the fact that the Hawaii Constitution does not have a prohibition against assisted dying or assisted suicide. You cannot cause a suicide, but assisting is not a crime in Hawaii, unlike other states like New York and.
So basically, what we are doing in Die Delicious series, we are actually comparing states like Oregon, Montana, and Washington, in which physician-assisted suicide or human euthanasia is legal.
Wait, we don't call it human euthanasia.
We don't call it human euthanasia?
No.
Why not? I call it like this.
We call it aid in dying.
Aid in dying.
Or death with dignity.
Okay, correction.
Okay, yeah. It's
human aid in dying.
Yeah. Okay, euthanasia means a doctor shoots you, with a lethal injection.
Yes.
No, they don't do that in Oregon or Montana or anywhere in the United States. Only in Holland and Belgium.
Oh, so they only do pills?
Yes. You get asked for a prescription from your doctor, and it's sleeping pills, and then when the time comes, you may decide to take them or not to take them. For many people, it's just a form of insurance. They don't, they decide they may not want to use it.
So according to our previous shows,
right,
we were already talking that in the state of Hawaii, the law was already working since the Molokai, 1909, on the patients who were terminally ill. and were dying within 6 months.
No,
so
they
were allowed to have, in Oregon is like that.
Right, but in
Yes.
Hawaii in 1909 it was a patient who was hopeless.
Hopeless.
Yeah, and beyond recovery and hopeless.
Yes.
And it was not necessarily just for leprosy or Hansen's disease.
Yes.
It was
For any.
for anything.
Yes.
And it didn't have to be 6 months then.
Yeah.
It could be.
So in the Hawaii right now,
Yeah.
you are trying to get that law passed so that everybody who is here dying and it's really in pain can just choose graceful exit. And then we have opposing side who are saying everything against it. I wish we had opposing side on the show because I definitely want to make sure that our viewers can have a clear comparison and can make their own choice. Now,
Wait 1 second.
yes.
We're not trying to pass anything. We're trying to defend an existing constitution.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Pardon.
Right. Okay.
At the beginning,
Right.
before that was known,
Yeah.
we were talking about passing
Right.
it instead of yes. Excuse me. Thank you
No,
for
no
correction.
problem.
Yeah. So now the poll has been done, and the results from only a few days ago, January 12, are showing us what? Can you explain to us?
Yeah. Let's take a look at the first slide here. Okay.
So we have here a poll from 2002.
Right.
If Hawaii voters are in favor or not.
Right.
Can you explain to us what does this mean?
Okay, so in 2002, 72% were for and 23% against, 72%, 7-2. And then the number in 2011 is 77% for and 18% against. And of the ones who are for, 48% are strongly in favor, you know. And the number, as you can see, has grown.
Yes.
It keeps growing.
Yes.
And you have to ask yourself, why is it growing? Because it's not necessarily because we're doing such a great PR job.
Yes.
I mean, there aren't too many of us, and we're not doing a great PR job.
And most of you guys are older
Yeah.
and kind of not overly.
Yeah, who cares about, I mean, most
Activistic.
people don't really spend too much time trying to become an activist for death. You know, like I said, you know,
Yes.
it's the party of death does not exist. You know, it's a party of life, like
Yes.
you.
That's why I'm
But
too for
living
live
delicious.
delicious.
Yes.
But dying is inevitable part. I want to die. I want to know what's waiting for me.
But
I
most
want to
people
have
don't care.
information.
I mean, even when this poll was released, there were only 2 press in attendance. It tells you how much interest there is. And
Yes.
the subject of dying scares people.
Yes.
The fact that you're doing this show is incredibly courageous on your part because it's not exactly what people want to talk about.
I
when
was
they're-
in war.
Yeah.
I saw dead people. My
Right.
best friend died.
Okay.
I was young teenager when she died. I faced the death so fast in life. I know I will face it soon, so I better get some information.
Well, what your attitude is that it's part of death is part of living, and then you want it to be delicious at the end.
Of course.
And unfortunately, as we all know, 4 out of 5 deaths in the U.S. are not delicious at the end. They
Yeah.
involve a lot of suffering and pain.
Yeah.
And that's what drove me to write the book when I saw my Jerry, my soulmate of 30 years, die from cancer,
Yes.
ovarian cancer. So
Yes.
you know it's not going to be pleasant at the end for most people, 4 out of 5 people.
Yeah.
So these are other options. So what you're seeing here is that the public is telling us, the Hawaiian public is telling us, without too much of a PR campaign, trust me, that they don't like what they see. They
They don't like what?
They don't like the dying options that they're seeing today.
Yes.
It's something bad is happening out there, and they want reform. They want the system to improve.
Yes.
They want another option. They want the option of being able to die, through the sleeping pills in your sleep.
Yes.
And they think this should be legalized, just like it is for your animals and pets. They would like to have that option of having a delicious death.
Yes.
Okay.
They don't have to use it.
They don't have
They
to
just
use
want
it.
to have
They
it
want the
available.
option on the table. And it seems that the public has been consistent over the years, the polling numbers.
Yes.
Because there are very few places where you get 77%.
Increasingly consistent. 72,
Yeah.
75, 77%.
Right. Increasingly persistent.
Yes.
And amazingly high number. I mean, when you think about it, it's more like almost 3 out of 4 people, want that.
Yes.
And typically you can't agree on too much. 3 out of 4 is a pretty good number. And consistently maintaining it would be incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
think about a popularity contest for a politician. They can maintain their popularity for too long.
Yes, yes.
This has been very popular, i.e. the issue of having the choice, and it's not going away.
Yeah.
So if you come and do the poll again in 2 or 3 years, it'll be even higher. And that's what we're seeing, the trend. And the nice thing about this poll is it was all done by the same agency.
Yes.
So, you know, we have a baseline to go from. You know,
Yeah.
it's pretty consistent, right?
Okay, so this is one of the information. Is there anything else that we... Here it says, a large majority agree that end-of-life decisions should be individual decision and that the medical community should establish proper guidelines and safeguards rather than the government. What does that mean?
Yeah.
That people agree on what?
So here, read this part here.
Okay, so this says that 92% of the people, it says how a terminally ill person chooses to end his or her life should be an individual decision and not a government decision. That means that people are actually wanting government completely out of their dying beds.
Out of the dying beds, out of the bed,
So to
right?
say, yes.
Yeah, out of the dying beds. In other words, they don't want prohibitions from the government. They want this thing to be. Oh,
Is it? By the way, is it 92% of everyone?
Everyone.
Or 92% of those 70?
No, it's 92% of
77%.
No, 92% of everyone. So even those who are against would still not want the government interfering, you know, in those decisions. And if you look at this one here, read the next one.
This one says the medical community and not the government should establish proper guidelines and safeguards to prevent potential abuse in the writing of possible life-ending medication prescriptions. What does that mean?
Okay, so what these two things together say is that the majority of the Hawaii public, 93%, want the government out of this. In other words, don't make any laws, stay out of this, no prohibitions. They also want the doctors involved. They want the doctors and the patients to agree on a protocol, to agree, you know.
They want medical community, not the government.
To be involved.
Yes.
And if you look at the next slide over here, okay, so read this one if you want.
8 in 10 would put trust in doctor. In the event I am diagnosed with a terminal illness, I would trust my own doctor to respond appropriately to my request for medication to bring about a peaceful death if my suffering becomes unbearable.
Right, and strongly agree 59%. Somewhat agree 22%. So you add these two numbers,
yes,
it's what?
This 81?
81%. So
yes.
81% want this to be a matter between patient and doctor.
Yes.
And those who strongly disagree are about 7%, somewhat disagree 6%. So
yes.
it tells you that the great majority of the Hawaiian public
yes.
want to see the government out of the, you know, the bedroom, the deathbed.
And the bedroom.
And the bedroom.
And the bedroom.
Bedroom was another story, but the deathbed, right?
Even when it comes to Clinton.
Right. Government out of the deathbed.
Yes.
And they want their doctors involved until the very end. They want their doctors to prescribe the medication for them if they ask for it. They want their doctors involved in their dying, right? And they want this to be above ground, you know, legal, and no one gets prosecuted for it, you know. So that's basically what the Hawaii public wants. And so the poll shows a very consistent picture of Hawaii public opinion. And even Catholics are about 60 to 65% for it. So it goes, you know, Republicans and Democrats
on this show.
And independents are all for it. It's not something that divides along party lines.
Yes.
It's a human issue because we are all mortal at the end.
Yes.
You see, so it transcends everyone. Everyone is involved in this, you know, and that's what comes back. You know, stay out of this, let the doctors and patients work it out, and give the patient what they need at the end. So they're asking you for prescription, that's what you should provide them, and that's what the majority, great majority wants. You know? So that's the bottom line, I mean,
yes.
about the poll. I mean, the poll goes on, there's, you know.
Of course.
Yeah, right.
So if anybody who is watching right now wants to see the details of the poll, is there some place on the internet when we can download that?
Yes, you can either go to Q mark, or go to compassionandchoiceshawaii.org. Compassion and Choices
I had them on the show.
Yeah,
one
you had
time.
them on the show,
yes.
Julia.
Compassionandchoices.org.
Yes. The Compassion and Choices, HI for Hawaii.
Hawaii.com.
Yeah.
So please go to Compassion and Choices, HRI.org, to get complete poll to see what our fellow
Hawaiians,
yeah. Yes, our community thinks about this issue. And please make sure to inform somebody about your opinions. If you disagree, I would love to have you on the show. Especially, I would love to have a bishop on the show. I want to have complete picture what people think about this from a religion standpoint of view, from compassion, meaning you cannot kill somebody, and all these other questions that we discussed many times before. I think it would be very important.
Right.
Yeah.
So why don't you invite them?
Why don't
and
they
you should
come?
also invite some of the senators who are against this.
Definitely.
And
speaking of senators, I would love to invite Josh Green. Can I ask you another question?
Yeah, you can. That's what I'm here for.
So we have a Star magazine here saying
Star Advertiser.
Yes,
yeah. It's the daily paper.
Yes, daily paper. We all know it. There is an article here that was on the front page on the Tuesday, January 17th, that says, assisted suicide not lawful, state says. A 100-year-old act does not let doctors kill, the Attorney General's office tells proponents.
Right.
So, can you, because the article is lengthy, can you please explain what it says?
Right. So
without any biases, just objectively, please.
Well, I'll tell you what, okay, obviously, people should read the fine details.
Exactly.
I read the article because
yes.
that's where the information is. In the article, you will see that Compassion and Choices lawyers
yes.
who fought in front of the Supreme Court, did lots of landmark cases. Mm-hmm. For example, a lawyer called Sylvia Law, a professor of law called, her name is Sylvia Law, mm-hmm. Pretty good name, huh?
Yeah,
she's quoted saying, we don't agree with this opinion.
Yes.
So remember, this is just an opinion of the Attorney General. Okay, it's not the law. It's one lawyer that works for the Attorney General interpretation of the law.
But does it still have a weight?
It's just an interpretation of the law. For example,
even if a celebrity wears something or endorses any product, masses find it important and they stand on that side. It's definitely
an opinion, and it carries weight. Okay.
Yes.
But you also, the Attorney General was, for the super ferry, and then eventually the courts decided against it.
Yes.
So it does. Eventually, that decision gets made in courts. Mm-hmm. The interpretation. The Attorney General is just an opinion. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's all. But the nice thing about having this opinion. Well, first of all, I'm not a lawyer, right?
Yes.
So I can only say what the lawyers have said. And the lawyers pointed out that that opinion was too narrow, and it wasn't what it did not address the constellation issue of laws. Mm-hmm. And they feel, Compassion and Choices lawyers feel, that they can win in a court of law. In other words, they can pull a Montana. In Montana, the whole thing was resolved on the Montana Supreme Court mm-hmm. case, okay? So the nice thing about having the Attorney General involved, oh, by the way, this thing came as a request from a senator who's against this aid in dying.
Yes.
And so the question got framed according to what Josh Green wanted to hear, and it was supposed to be confidential between Josh Green and the Attorney General, right?
Is it confidential?
No, because they broadcast it, they published it everywhere. So it's not confidential anymore, but the original discussion was between a senator and the AG. Mm-hmm. Our side did not ask the AG for an opinion. We were planning to, but so if we had presented to them the case the way Catherine Tucker, the Supreme Court lawyer, wrote it, mm-hmm. maybe it would have come back different. But they got it from Josh, not from Catherine Tucker. Okay, so we didn't have a chance to even tell them what the case was.
Yes.
Okay, so you can see a point-by-point rebuttal to the AG's opinion on Compassion and Choices, Hawaii.org. But let me just tell you something else right now. Let's discuss this thing, the significance.
Yes.
The significance is that for the first time, the Attorney General has done an excellent job putting together the whole case against it, against what Catherine Tucker and Compassion and Choices are discussing. So we know exactly now the parameters, that have to be met, to make this legal. I mean, to establish beyond any doubt that it is legal.
Yes, for every patient who wants it now.
Right. And the attorneys who looked at that, the very nicely packaged opinion by the AG felt they can deal with each of the issues the AG brought up. For example, when it came to the 1909 law, the AG agrees that the law, the way it stands, allows, it's a patient bill of rights, dying patient bill of rights that would allow, a dying patient to either seek relief or curative, see? But then they used the legislative history of 1909
yes.
to make their opinion, not the actual words of the law. But then if you go back to legislative history, you'll see that in 1909 itself, they changed 3 times as it went through the committee had 3 different hearings. At the end, the committee omitted any reference to leprosy or any specific disease
yes.
and made it highly generic.
Yes.
And so on and so forth. Okay,
but is there any chance of that being abused?
By whom?
By patients, by doctors, by family members, by whoever.
Well, this is what...
Because it's so generic.
It is... That's why you have to look at the whole constellation. You just can't look at one law.
Yes.
The 1909 law, like I told you last time, is icing on the cake. But there's a constellation of other laws that together, define the practice. So, for example, they define pain management, they define the privacy law, they define, living wills, all that stuff. So when you take them all together, they establish a sort of medical standard of care around these issues. So people would use the Oregon type of boundaries, or what safeguards. The doctors will make sure that there are 2 doctors, that ascertain that the patient is terminal, and that the patient is sane of mind,
yes.
And so on and so forth. So, like we discussed earlier,
Before
all these, safeguards get done. So that's why you can't just use the 1909 law on its own. You have to look at the whole constitution of laws. I mean, the whole constitution of Hawaii laws and how it plays together.
When the poll was pulled in Hawaii, this one in early December, were people familiar with the details of it when they were voting for it?
No, people don't know too much about this issue. They don't know hardly about Oregon or anything. They just know what they see with their eyes. What they see with their eyes is that they saw their relatives die a painful death.
Yes.
They saw somebody in their family die a painful death.
Yeah.
And that's why the numbers come out like that. It has nothing to do with knowledge or people don't necessarily go and read my book. They don't read articles on Oregon.
Yes.
Trust me.
Yeah, we read articles on gossip, articles on sport, articles on big drama.
Right, but the reason why it keeps coming back has something to do with their eyes. What they experience doesn't lie to them. They saw grandma suffering horribly, and they think it shouldn't be that way.
Yes. So one more question that has been on my mind a lot.
Wait, before we go there, can I say one more thing?
Yes.
The issue here with Attorney General right now is very interesting, because what it will lead to, it will lead to, now that they put an opinion out there, there's nothing to stop a doctor through compassion and choices to ask for the Hawaii Supreme Court, for a opinion, for a ruling. In other words, they can have a lawsuit in front of the Hawaii Supreme Court, say, we want a declarative lawsuit that explains, if I as a doctor do this, is it okay? So it can go straight, fast track to the Hawaii Supreme Court. And if the Hawaii Supreme Court comes back in agreement with compassionate choices interpretation, of the law, then it's legalized forever. It's like what happened in Montana. I mean, there's one way to legalize something is through the law, the courts. Another way to do it is through the legislation, right? So, for example, the abortion thing was done through Roe versus Wade, right? It was done by the Supreme Court of the United States. Yeah. And likewise, this can be done through the Supreme Court of Hawaii, right? And this way, you don't have to go through committees and all these bottlenecks, And the Supreme Court of Hawaii will deal with existing law.
How do you see the future of Hawaii, working out in Hawaii? Through the Supreme Court?
The Supreme Court, and our lawyers feel absolutely that this is like so much more strong than Montana. Hawaii has is much more favorable, the law in Hawaii, the Constitution, because of the 1909 law, because of the fact that the manslaughter law doesn't have a prohibition against assisting in dying, aid in dying, just causing the death. Because of the, Hawaii, has all these other very, very progressive laws on pain management, on privacy, on advanced directives, all that stuff. So Hawaii is a very friendly place for this type of lawsuit to take place. So we are confident. I mean, not me personally, but the lawyers are confident that they can win this case. And so there's a team of lawyers that involves the 2 Supreme Court lawyers that are Compassionate Choices and local lawyers, a whole team of local lawyers that are willing to take it all the way to the Hawaii Supreme Court, if necessary, to establish it once and for all.
So speaking of, if that doesn't happen or if it takes too long, why don't we just commit suicide? Suicide is legal. Why have to go through all these complications and beg doctors or Hawaii state to be on your side if you can just commit suicide?
Okay. What we're trying to do is help a person in the last 72 hours of their lives.
How many hours?
72 hours. In other words, these people are probably going to be in hospice, and then at the end, they have the pills just in case things go wrong, and they take it, it's in the form of insurance. Yes. They only take it to sedate themselves if the hospice doesn't do it fast enough. Because typically the hospice does sedate you, but some of them go slow. So if it turns out not to be fast enough, then having that possibility in your pocket, having that insurance is what this is all about. But let me just answer your question another way.
Because we only have 28 seconds left.
Okay. Suicide itself is not, most of the ways of doing suicide require that you have mobility, require that you can jump off a building, require that you can kill yourself with a gun and so on and so forth. People really want to do death with dignity. They want to die in their beds, in their sleep, with their families around them and their doctors around them. They want this to be peaceful. And so suicide itself, the way people commit suicide tends to be not very delicious, right?
So,
you get it?
Okay, I see. Okay, so let's see how we go further with this topic. I'm looking forward to interviewing other people who are against it. In the meantime, before you die, live delicious.